In the era of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, a letter was written to one of the pious predecessors. And this letter has been preserved and documented in some of these classical works. And it's a piece of advice that the Caliph gave to the people at the time. He said, "Man akthara dhikr al-mawti radiya min ad-dunya bil-yasir." That the one who increases in how much he remembers death in his day-to-day life, he becomes more content with little in life. وَمَنْ عَدَّ كَلَامَهُ مِنْ عَمَلِهِ قَلَّ كَلَامُهُ إِلَّا فِي مَا يَنْفَعُهُ. And the one who considers his speech an integral part of his day-to-day actions, he only speaks in that which benefits him. A very profound piece of advice. And there are a few lessons we can draw from this. The first is the importance of remembering death often. We live in a Western liberal society where the mentioning of death is overshadowed. A society that teaches people that the mentioning of death is not just insignificant, but it brings about no utility to the life of the average person. And that's why slowly when death isn't mentioned, our hearts become attached to this temporary world, and we make no mention of the world that awaits us. And the time that we're going to spend in the next life is far greater and lengthier than the time we're going to spend here. And I always put forth an analogy that puts things into perspective. Imam al-Nawawi, he lived in this world for 40 years. And he died in the 3rd century. He's been in his grave for almost 1,000 years. So he spent 40 years in this life, and he's been in his grave for nearly 1,000 years. Which life is more deserved of preparation? This world that lasts for maybe 30, 40, 50 years if we're lucky? Or a world in which we're going to reside for maybe 1,000 years? Where should we invest? Which world warrants our thought and reflection and time and effort? And the more death becomes non-existent in a person's heart and mind and life, the more attached we become to this world, losing focus of what truly matters in life. The second benefit is the importance of speech. The more we speak about things that don't benefit us, and more importantly, the more our speech consists of sin, profanity, bad language, insults and slander, the less likely we are to connect to anything that's righteous or pious. And that's why some of the Salaf would often say, the same tongue that uses profanity, the same tongue that makes sexual references, the same tongue that slanders, can never taste the sweetness of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if our tongues aren't controlled, and we don't use our tongues in that which brings about benefit, then we lose the ability to immerse ourselves in any form of goodness. And that's what this piece of advice teaches us. That it's not only crucial for us to think about the hereafter and mention death, it's also crucial for us to control our limbs. And the tongue being a fundamental part. In fact, many classical scholars considered the limbs to be gateways to the heart and the soul. That what we say upon our tongues is a direct reflection of what we're consuming. It's a reflection of the state of our heart. And some of the predecessors would often say, look at a man when he speaks and listen to him carefully. For his tongue will inform you of what lies deep inside. So what we utter, what we say, what we vocalize is a reflection of what's settled deep within us. And the last and final lesson, and it overlaps with the first point, is the akhirah should be the focal point. In this world, we should have an akhirah-centric mindset. That irrespective of which step we take, the first thought should be, how is this decision going to affect my afterlife? Because ultimately, the moment we depart this world, the only one thing that's going to bring about any benefit is good deeds that we've left behind through which we gain some reward and utility. Everything else is going to disappear. And we know the famous hadith where the Prophet said, يَتْبَعُ الْمَيِّتَ ثَلَاثَةً. 3 things follow the deceased. أهله وماله وعمله. His family, his wealth and his deeds. فيرجع اثنان. And two things return. أهله وماله. His family and his wealth. When this deceased person thinks his siblings, his spouse, his friends will bring about some redemption, they disappear. The wealth he spent his nights and mornings pursuing, stacking up money in his bank account, latching onto these acquisitions in his worldly life, he finds when he's in his grave, even the wealth that he spent his lifetime acquiring, it will disappear and wither away. And he's left with one thing, amaluhu, his deeds. And the confronting question is, the deeds that we've carried out, how confident are we that these deeds are going to provide us a solace and closure when we lie in our grave 6 feet under? And that's the most confronting question that we should posit to ourselves on a regular basis. The deeds that we've prepared, have we prepared enough for that meeting? Are we doing enough in this world? Are we investing enough in the hereafter? The investment we make in our businesses, our takeaways, our shops, is that in line with the investment we're making for the hereafter? Do we really think the hereafter is our abode? Or do we consider this life to be our final abode? Is this the permanent residence? And is that the temporary residence in our eyes? So this piece of advice really forces us to come out of our comfort zones and question the reality of our lifestyle, our mindset, our train of thought. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to connect our hearts to the afterlife and to be of those who foster a desire to meet Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَقُولُ قَوْلِي هَذَا وَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْهِ. Inshallah, from tomorrow, Fajr Jama'ah will be at 5:10, did you say? 5:10. Yeah, 5:10, inshallah, start time. Jazakumullah khairan wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.